guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be looking at my reading stats for the for the year of 2024. Hi, by the way, I know I haven't been on here in forever. I'm going to be having, more videos about what I read specifically in 2024 coming up. I'm going to be doing a 2024 wrap up, but as I said, this is just going to be the reading stats in general for last year. So let's get started with that. I am on Storygraph right now. I update Storygraph every single time I read with how much I read, what books I'm reading. So if you want to be friends and or follow me on there, go right ahead. The link will be below, as well as my Goodreads, which I also update regularly. For the most part, I'll get into why in a little bit here. But anyways, so I love to look at my stats at the end of the year, as a lot of us do. I am not going to look at the reading wrap up right here because there's just a bunch of random extra stuff in there, and I just want to focus on what I'm going to focus on. So anyways, as you can see here, my 2024 reading goal was 30 books, and I only read 29. I was so close. I finished my last book right on New Year's Eve, and I just didn't have time to finish. So this is what we got. I was just one book shy, but that's okay because I kind of slacked for the last few months of 2024, so it is what it is. So according to Storygraph, I read 12,067 pages. So I said in another video that I'm going to link for you guys above and below why I don't trust Goodreads and Storygraph as far as keeping track of pages. So this is probably just a estimate. I mean, we'll run with it. So I read about 12,067 pages. I did come up recently with a new system of how I'm going to be keeping track of pages. So I'm going to be using it this year, but good enough. That's what we're left with. I'm fine with that. It took me an average of 14 days to finish a book. And then these were the moods that I most read, or the breakdown of the moods of the books that I read. Surprise, surprise, it's mostly negative, with tense, dark, emotional, and mysterious. Well, not that mysterious is necessarily negative, but that's my most read mood. And then challenging, inspiring, sad, and informative is the mood that I read the least, closely followed by funny, adventurous for the second mood that I read the least of, which doesn't surprise me. Again, I like mystery thrillers, so that definitely reflects with that. I read mostly medium-paced books. The average number of pages that I read is between 300 and 499. And of course, I read mostly fiction. The one nonfiction book that is being represented here for the one nonfiction that I read was actually a reread. So yeah, I'm not that much of a nonfiction reader, honestly, unless it's like a self-help book. I mean, not always, but in this case, that's what it was. I reread Atomic Habits. Actually, I listened to the audiobook. When I first read the book back in 2023, the beginning of 2023, I read the physical book, but this time I took out the audiobook. So that's what the one nonfiction book is, and I'll talk more about it in my year-long wrap-up, but I would 100% recommend Atomic Habits. I know there's a lot of hype around that book, but yeah, if you're like me, if you have issues keeping habits and creating new habits and even procrastination, I would highly recommend that book. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating when I said it changed my life. So anyways, let's move down here to genres. What do we have here? Oh, surprise, surprise, mystery and thriller, top 2, followed by literary and fantasy, psychology, and self-help, of course, again, is what I read the least of. I'm kind of surprised that the crime count is only 3, but I suppose the mystery thrillers don't necessarily count themselves in crime genres, at least not the books that I read and of how they're classified on Storygraph. So I think that's a little bit interesting. Alrighty, so then a couple things about format. This year, I started for the first time reading digital books and listening to audiobooks. Now, I will always be a physical book type of girl. I just love having physical books in my hand. I love turning the pages. I love smelling the book, as weird as that might sound. I don't know. I just love having a physical book in my hand. But during the year when I was at work, I got bored of listening to podcasts and, I wanted something different. And I was like, wow, I have a really huge TBR. Why not knock out some of those books while I have time? So, and actually, I did read one audiobook in 2023 because that was all that was available to me at my library at the time for a book club book. But I don't know. I didn't really start getting into audiobooks until last year. And as you can see, I listened to quite a few because they made up 41% of my reading, a total of 12 books. And I did complete one digital book. I did read a few digital books that I didn't finish, but the one that I did complete was reflected there. And I think the reason why I started with digital books is because sometimes they're just quicker to get at my library, not all the time. But now, especially during the winter, I don't drive, so I can't really justify taking an Uber to and from the library constantly to pick up books. So it's just easier for me to get a digital book from my library sometimes. So I did discover digital books this year, or last year, so that was kind of cool. But of course, as you can see, I still mostly stuck to print books, and that always will be my favorite medium of reading, but I'm really proud of myself for trying new mediums last year. And then my most read authors were Eva Gates, which, were Eva Gates, Janice Holland, and Karen M. McManus, which obviously to me anyway isn't surprising. I started the Lighthouse Library Mystery Series last year and made it through 4 of those books last year, as you can see, so obviously that's my most read author. I read 3 books by Janice Hallett and 2 books by Karen M. McManus because I finished the One of Us is Lying series. I finished that in 2024. I read One of Us is Lying, I believe is the first book. I read that in 2023. So yeah, again, I will get more into these books what I thought about them in my 2024 wrap up. All the books I read were in English, and this is the breakdown of the number of books and pages that I read. Once again, I don't know how accurate this page number is compared to what I really read, but according to Storygraph, this is what I have. It looks like September and March were my most successful months, which I feel like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, it does, now that I think about it. And then my star ratings, the last category here, with an average rating of 3.75, my lowest rated book is 2.5, followed by 4.0, and then 4.75. So those were the only books that I actually rated on Storygraph all year. Now, I will say I do not rate books very often because I don't know how to describe it. So the 5-star rating system is kind of a little bit weird for me because this is, I think, something that I haven't seen that often. Maybe if you do the same thing, let me know. But for me, 3 necessarily is not a good score, which I feel like for other people, 3 is kind of a good score. For me, it's not. I would really consider like maybe 3.75 and above in the good range. I don't know why, and I'm also super stingy, by the way, with giving out 5 stars. I very seldom give out 5 stars. I did at one point to an audiobook, but it was right after I read it, and I think that was just me coming off of like the high of the book, but then when I really had time to sit and think about it, I was like, in hindsight, I don't know if I agree with that 5-star rating, so I went ahead and changed it, and that's this 4.75 rating that you see here. Honestly, even one of my most favorite books that I've read within the past few years, I don't know if I could even give it a 5. A book just has to be really mind-blowing for me in order for it to be a 5-star read. So I don't know. For those reasons, I don't really go ahead and rate that often because a lot of it is based on hindsight, I guess. I don't know. And before I do give a book a rating, though, I need to take some time and think about it. Or if it's a book that I feel so strongly about the star rating, I will rate it right away. Like this 2.5 rating here, this book I felt so passionate about. I was like, I this book is a 2.5, and it was the same thing with this book right here, 4 stars. This book was a a 4-star book for me. But anyway, if you've ever checked out my book blog, for those I do give star ratings to, even though I haven't updated that book in that blog in like almost 2 years now. It's been 2023, but anyway, yeah, for that I do give out. So even though in my head while I'm reading I might give a book a star review, I don't always do it on Goodreads and Storygraph. But going back to that, whenever I read a physical book, I do still update my Goodreads, but it's not really accurate as far as every single book that I encountered during the year, because on Goodreads there isn't a mechanism, at least I don't think so, for audio and ebook, and I don't want to go in and count audiobooks as physical books because that'll screw up my page count, even though, as I said, I don't really trust the way that Goodreads and Storygraph, again, for that matter, keeps track of pages anyway. But yeah, so Goodreads is really just going to be for physical books going forward, and Storygraph is going to be for everything else. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I am going to put in a very solid effort of trying to post more often. I know I say that all the time, but yeah, so if you want to be friends on Storygraph and or Goodreads, go ahead and add me. I will link those 2 profiles down below. If you add me, I will add you back. So yeah, as I mentioned, check out my 2024 wrap up. Once that's posted, I will link it once it's posted so you guys can find it easily. But in that video, I will be going into, obviously, what I thought of the books and what specific, books by the authors I read and everything like that, so you guys can see. But yeah, tell me a little bit about your reading stats for 2024, if you have a way of keeping track of them. Were you surprised with any of your stats? Did they help you think about your reading a little bit and maybe help you set more goals? I am personally very interested to see last year what my audio and ebook count percentages compared to this year. But yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye.